Hi, everybody. It's Brian Mahoney, the CEO of Trend Research and the president of the OTT executive community. We're continuing in our OTT executive podcast series where we interview leaders in the industry and get to know a little bit from them and a little bit about them as well. Today, we're joined by Eric Keith, the Chief Content Officer for Space Mob. Eric, welcome.
Hey, nice to see you.
This is great. Well, listen, thank you for spending the time with us here today. Maybe just a quick background on yourself, kind of start a little bit about your career and kind of how you got to where you are today.
Very good. Yeah, so I'm Chief Content Officer for Space Mob, an executive producer. My background, I started in theater and film back in the 90s and, worked my way onto a set so I could watch producers. I got very excited to start producing my own plays, my own, short films, and then into feature films and just sort of work my way up. Along the way, I worked in digital media, so I learned a lot about sort of digital sales and marketing and that sort of thing. Spent the last 8 years, four of which have been in streaming, but the last eight working for Space Mob, working with web publishing companies when we started. So we worked with groups like Dow Jones, the Wall Street Journal, Match.com, those sorts of groups doing as an extension of their video production team.
Hmm.
And then later moved into more branded content for groups like Honda Motorcycles, NBC Universal, bigger brands, and eventually moved into streaming media and
Hmm.
found a home really creating fast channels for partners that partner brands that were looking to create a fast channel from their content, as well as creating original series. I think we have three that are either headed or on PBS, six series that are on Amazon Prime Video, and then dozens more kind of across all the different platforms. So producing has always been my path, and now I get to produce as well as launch fast channels.
That's awesome. So you're squarely a content person, a creator.
I am. I like to call myself a storyteller.
Mhm.
Really interested whether it's the story of a brand or whether it's a story of a particular documentary subject or a narrative feature. Story is where we all meet.
Hmm. So, Eric, tell me about your current role.
I'm the chief content officer for Space Mob, a digital media company that does streaming, video, and television content.
Okay, and so how much of the business model for Space Mob is content production, hosting, streaming? Where do you fit into the overall ecosystem?
So it kind of varies depending on when you talk to us, but right now, production is a part of it. It's largely used. Our studio is largely being used to feed our fast business.
Hmm.
So we'll do editing and content around the fast channels. We do produce series as well. We've done a number of those. We haven't quite figured out how that's a financial model that makes sense for the direction that we're heading. But we like to do production as a part of what we're doing. It sort of solidifies us in partners' minds as being a well-rounded group that does both content and business.
Hmm. So let's talk about the fast channels a little bit. Any update there, and just from a larger kind of industry perspective, how that's been a big trend over the last few years. How is that going in your mind?
I think it's a pretty tough nut to crack right now. They're cutting more channels than they are adding.
Hmm.
The major platforms are cutting down pretty dramatically. We're adding more channels, so it's a good place for us because we kind of understand it, and we're growing in that space. We just added Monster Jam as a partner. We've got a baking channel called Bigger Bolder uh, Baking that's going to be coming out soon, and we've got a handful of other really sort of big properties that were on network television. Um, it's a good space. It's super competitive
Hmm.
and kind of you wonder how long that bubble will last.
Hmm. So yeah, I've heard it described as a bubble by others as well. In the last few years, it's gone from you could almost create a channel on anything and get distribution to, talking to sort of like the CTV platforms, for instance, where they might sort of cull the herd on a periodic basis to get rid of the channels that aren't really drawing in viewers or the content gets a little stale. Any tips or advice about how to best navigate the fast marketplace?
Yeah, I mean, all I can say is that live is a huge component right now.
Hmm.
If you're putting out a channel that has some live piece to it, uh, you're generally in better shape than
Hmm.
if you didn't have that. Um, and we also like to do channels that have a VOD component as well. So we're not just doing the channel, but we're also doing the VOD just to maximize our ability to make revenue.
Hmm.
But yeah, not to give away the secret sauce, but those are two elements that are pretty important.
Well, live is important one because usually it's a unique asset, right? It's a unique content. It's in real time, so you can sort of have that water cooler benefit. And people have to sort of tune in. It's kind of scheduled or kind of meet up TV. So that all makes sense. And how do you balance like where do you sort? Maybe you can talk a little bit about your content strategy and how you source your content.
Yeah, so I mean, we are really heavily focused on like entertainment sports.
Hmm.
So we're in talks with a soccer league. We have Monster Jam, which is monster trucks and family fun for the whole crew.
Hmm.
We've got another big league around basketball that might come through and so on and so forth. But most everything that we're doing right now is in the entertainment sports arena. We like it because it naturally comes with a live
Hmm.
aspect. It may cost a little bit more, but you can get live with sports.
Hmm.
And you also get a nice wide demographic with sporting and frankly the platforms like it. So
Yeah. And yeah, sports are I mean, a lot being spent on sports right now. Some of the major deals that we saw with like Major League Soccer and NFL, all the big players are realizing that sports is something that is, sort of defensible territory. So that makes a lot of sense. But there's a lot of opportunities out there too for kind of more niche sports that have, very avid fans. And they may not have distribution. So streaming is a great way to do that for them. Can you talk a little bit about, what that negotiation looks like, how to do those licensing deals, why they'd want to partner with you versus somebody else, exclusives, anything along those lines?
yeah, I mean, speaking of sort of more niche sports, we have a pickleball channel,
Okay.
which has been really interesting and pretty successful. Yeah, so, I mean, honestly, the opportunities they're out there. We've got one that I can't talk about, but I can reference that we kind of really dug to find, but it's through looking at schedules on network television of just seeing, okay, what are people watching and where does it show up, and then you look at the odd stuff. I mean, I've looked at every military competition out there. I've looked
Hmm.
at axe throwing and every sort of crazy sport you can imagine. I'm trying to think of the craziest one, but some of the firefighter challenge and just all the different stuff that's out there that could be a potential channel. You look at it, you weigh the opportunity, and then you kind of go from there. We do everything on a rev share
Hmm.
for the most part. I
Okay.
mean, there are the occasional exceptions, but most of our partnerships are truly a partnership. A lot of times it's people that haven't thought of fast yet or weren't sure how to do fast. Our biggest competition generally is the platforms themselves.
Hmm.
So they want to take a good channel and make it exclusive to them, as opposed to having somebody like us take it to 5 or 10 different platforms.
Hmm.
But it generally works out better for the partner if they can be on as many platforms as possible.
Right. So you're doing the revenue share, and so these deals aren't necessarily exclusive, but you offer distribution for your content partners.
Yeah, they're exclusive in the sense that we don't allow our partners to go out and do other fast channel opportunities without us.
Okay.
Like that we're in the fast business together. Non-exclusive when it comes to like wanting to put something on VOD or on TVOD or
Mhm.
whatever. Like we're not digging into every aspect of our partner's business. We're just literally in the fast channel business.
Okay. That makes sense. I mean, I think, if you look at it that way, it's one way to monetize content, and there are other ways as well, as you mentioned, VOD, SVOD, and who knows, broadcast. But so that's interesting. So where is the industry going? You said fast, could be considered a bubble. And by bubble, it may not pop, it may be more consolidation. The sort of bar is higher for getting distribution deals. We have, I don't know, I think one analyst was quoted as saying there's over 1,300 fast channels now. So that's a lot. That's a lot of options for consumers. How do you think consumer behavior is going to change in 2024, and how will that shape the market?
I mean, I think more and more consumers are going to be consuming these fast channels. Like if we're talking just about fast, I think there's two ways of watching content. You either seek it out and you go find it on VOD
Hmm.
or SVOD, or you go and you watch TV the old way, which is the fast channel, and sort of scroll through and find content that appeals to you in that moment. I think that's the direction it will continue to go. I think we'll see more of the same. I think from a channel perspective, you're going to see higher quality channels. I mean, they're
Hmm.
really, really sifting through and making sure that anything that's on the air is actively being watched. And
Hmm.
there's not a bunch of lonely channels out there. They're getting squashed. So
Hmm.
if your channel isn't earning a certain amount of money, you're gonna find it back in your lap. It's not
Right.
gonna last very long. So
Hmm.
I think that trend will continue until they get it down to a number that everybody feels comfortable with, which I don't know where that is, but it would make me nervous if I knew what it was.
Yeah, I mean, and then there's also the larger environment in which viewers are watching content. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like how much aggregation can you do? Are your, fast channels, for instance, you mentioned cooking, you mentioned pickleball. There's only so many things you can combine. Are those all sort of unique channels on their own? What's your role as sort of an aggregator, leveraging the same, distribution partnerships you have?
We're not doing a whole lot of aggregation when it comes to the content of a fast channel. We're almost exclusively doing single purpose
Hmm.
channels.
Hmm.
Um, that's just the direction that we've gone. We do have a couple of like horror channel or food channel, whatever, but generally speaking, we're doing single partnership channels.
Hmm. And is there enough content library to, populate a channel? Or, if you look at sort of the linear concept and, you know, do you have to have, like, what's the minimum number of titles before you feel like you comfortably have, a big enough or a full enough channel to offer to launch to the marketplace?
We like to see 150 hours of content to
Okay.
start out with the
Mhm.
ability to refresh on a regular basis. So, if it's something like a I Love Lucy that's only got a finite number of episodes, then you might need 100 hours plus, 50 episodes that you hold out to use as refresh,
Mhm.
for example. But yeah, that's kind of the direction that we like to go.
Okay. And how about viewer acquisition? What is your strategy for acquiring new eyeballs, for new viewers for your fast channels?
So we invested in an ad agency. Space Mob purchased Answer Media, which was our original parent company name. But we have a all-female run ad agency
Mhm.
that does social media and like PR and that sort of thing. And they really are pressing um, so like Red Green Channel, we have a show called the Red Green Show that was one of the biggest sort of comedies in the history of Canada,
Hmm.
and it's gone on and just blown up as a fast channel. Like the social following has been enormous, and now we're selling flannel shirts and doing all this kind of crazy merchandise and all this stuff. But the social media team at Answer Media has been able to just really push those users back to the content again and again and again, and it's been a huge success. So the having the agency, I think, is a crucial part of a company like ours, because it's not enough to just build it.
Right.
You have to sort of figure out how to make them come. So
Yep.
yeah.
So interesting you mentioned social and merchandising. I'm doing some research around communities as a way to kind of envelop your video library, your video business, whatever it might be, with greater opportunities for engagement, greater monetization. Can you talk about that a little bit? Like what is there money being left on the table? Or another way to put it, is there more opportunity to kind of grow, increase your engagement and, monetize new business models to complement your fast channels?
There's definitely money left left on the table every day. It's kind of, you wish you would have known now what you knew that you didn't know then, sort of thing.
Hmm.
Um, it's a really interesting situation. You get to this point where we're selling these Dixon flannel shirts, and we sold 1,000 in the first 5 days,
Hmm.
to the red green supporters, and it just makes you wonder what else you could potentially put in front of them that
Hmm.
they would enjoy, that would sort of fulfill them in some way, while continuing to keep. I mean, it's also a promotional thing, right? So you've
Right.
got all these people wearing red green flannel shirts around. It's sort of a win-win for everyone. And I know, like, Monster Jam, they're the biggest merchandisers that I know. They're really, really good at upselling you when you go to an event, and, like, you end up spending $200 on toys for your kids, but the tickets only cost you $15 or something like that. So I think there's a lot of money to be made. We see that opportunity now with every single channel that we do. It's like, you've got 5 million followers. How do we capitalize on that relationship with the followers to the
Hmm.
fans, and create more fandom for the product?
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're talking about live as well. I mean, you mentioned in real life events, we can kind of tie the content into that. You can sell merch that helps with the branding, which helps with the viewer acquisition. So it becomes sort of a virtuous cycle, over time if you can tap into it the right way, right?
That's right.
Well, cool. So let's talk a little bit about just industry trends. We talked about fast. Any predictions for 2024? What do you see coming down the pike, either in your business or at the industry level?
So in the OTT space,
Hmm.
I don't have a whole lot outside of Fast. I mean, Fast is really where my brain is at. In terms of, like, OTT production, I think it's going to get, I think more and more companies that are sort of, mid to small level are going to get out of the production game altogether, just because it's so hard to,
Hmm.
really generate revenue.
Okay.
There's a lot of people coming out of places like, Discovery and other cable networks that are producers that go out and are producing shows as a sort of one-man band, and
Hmm.
they're able to make a good living that way. But does it really scale to the type of business that we would want to have? So I think you're going to see more and more, sort of independent producers producing content with fewer big companies behind them. That's my take on it. And with Fast, I think it's just going to continue to blow up.
Hmm.
I think the number of channels is going to decrease, and we'll be on a even playing field with everybody, and it's going to be tough to get new channels through.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a first mover advantage, and at some point you're playing catch up, and at some point it's too late, right? Because the established sort of value chain of content through distribution is already sort of solidified. So unless you have something really creative or new, or as you mentioned, certain sports franchises that haven't been locked up yet, and that those opportunities are becoming fewer and far between. So that makes sense. So, Eric, one of the things we like to do in this podcast is sort of personalize some of the leaders in the industry, people like yourself. Is there any hobby or interest you can share with our audience?
Sure. I mean, obviously, the first one that I'd always mention is just that of a filmmaker. You know, that's definitely a hobby as well as a career at times. No, I would say the thing I'd like to talk about is my passion for my kids. I know
Mhm.
that's it's kind of a cliche thing, but I've got a son who is just obsessed with Pokemon, and so I've learned more about Pokemon, and you know I find myself ordering these Pokemon cards for Christmas, and just really getting into he's like, this is really rare, and I'm like, I'm seeking the rare cards for my kid. It's a lot of fun, but yeah, he's 8, and then I've got a 4-year-old girl too, so she would like to say that I'm into princesses or dollies or something.
That's funny. Do you remember, was it just a few years ago they had that Pokemon craze where they had the augmented reality where you'd see like Pokemon monsters on the side of the road or something? That was crazy. I forgot about that.
Pokemon Go, they still have that.
Yes.
Yeah,
How is that? Is that still going strong?
it is. Yeah, it's a normal part of our road trips. Anywhere we go, we've got Pokemon Go going in the background. So
Oh, that's so fun. Well,
what I
listen,
don't like is that you can't disconnect the audio from your sound system without, like the Bluetooth picks up from the phone, picks up on the audio system of the car. So you're listening to
oh,
the sounds of Pokemon Go on the car as you're
you can't
driving.
escape it.
No, you can't.
Well, good thing. I mean, your kids are your passion, so you don't mind it. And as I've often said, the years are long, but the I'm sorry, the days are long, but the years are short. It goes by really, really fast. So you have to enjoy it while you have it.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. My kids are all in college and they're back this week, and so, we're planning some fun things. It's just nice to have them home. Well, listen, Eric, I really appreciate your time on this podcast. Great getting to know you, learning from some of your insights as well. We'll keep an eye out on Space Mob in 2024. And yeah, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Once again, everybody, this is Brian Mahoney, the president of the OTT executive community. And we've been interviewing Eric Keith, Chief Content Officer with Space Mob. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you so much.